this is about making disciples who make disciples. And I am dreaming and praying for the opportunity to see 5, 6, and 7 generations of disciples in my church, and around this northern part where we are living. And I'm recording the journey in the midst of that, just sharing my reflections on that. Yeah, October 16th. This is just my journey of making disciples as a local pastor here in Canada. And my hope is to, I guess a couple things. One is it helps me process by doing this, but also to help others learn from my experience. And I love to connect with you, and we'll see where this goes. I'm not really fully sure, but just walk in the journey. So wrote down a couple things to chat today about for over the last, at least since my last check-in, for where things are at. And so I've had a week off, and I always find that kind of sometimes hard and a little bit strange, but it's important to do. And so I had the pastor's retreat, which we chatted. I'll probably bring it up again. And then I took some extra times off. And so here in Canada, our Thanksgiving is early October. I wish it was later October, but anyways, it is what it is. So took some time off. I didn't really go anywhere. I had hoped to, didn't plan anything, but just did stuff around the house and kind of stayed home. And the family's still working and doing school and all that. So we did do some drives, though. Absolutely loved the leaves in our area this time of year. Is pretty amazing. Some of my highlights I did, and this was one of those, like, people like, oh, you shouldn't have, but there's this line I find in ministry of it's a job, but it's not a job. And so I actually, on the Saturday that I was supposed to be off, we had our men's group. And this was the men's group that I just started. It was only our second meeting. I felt it was important to show up. We had someone who I could have called in. Any one of them could lead it, to be honest. But felt, no, I want to, still that stage of like trying to teach the way and stir the pot in a sense, in a good way, and be able to move. And so I decided to go. My wife was okay with it, and they were all sleeping because it's nice and early in the morning. So, and we're done. And then afterwards I went home, and we went down to my parents for Thanksgiving. But absolutely amazing second meeting. And we actually had one new guy come, which was great to have him out. One of our other men's leaders who was able to come. And it just, I continue to be amazed at the simplicity of the Discovery Bible Study and walking through the scriptures and engaging with the scriptures. And, one of the other guys said, like, man, I sort of wish it was every week, because then we could, like, I was looking forward to this, and some really good stories. And then we get to that moment when we've read through the scriptures, we've summarized it, we've wrestled with a bit of it, and like, okay, what's this mean in our life? And I pushed them. I said, look, don't tell me, like, what's this mean in general? Though they still go there, right? We all go there. But, like, what's it mean in your life? And I've realized part of the process is we have to push harder there. In North America, we're not trained to think in such ways. We're trained to recognize, here's the some applications, which are probably for everybody else, but not in the, like, okay, what is God asking me to do? And it was just a good experience where they really started to wrestle with, what is God asking me to do? And these guys that are coming, these guys are going to disciple other men. That is, I am praying for that. I know it's going to take place, and my prayers will see generational discipleship happen. And this is just kind of the beginning of that. Like, I want to, like, let's go and get going, but I know there's value in the slowness, the simplicity, and the methodicalness of walking and teaching. And so I have to walk that. And internally I fight, some of that. But I want to celebrate that, hey, for the second meeting, we had these guys come out, and that's a win. I mentioned my drive north, and that was, I had never been that far north. Well, at least that part of Northern Ontario, I guess. And it's not super far, but because we're north, and I know north is always kind of relative, I always wanted to go up. And so it was amazing to go, like, it's just bush as we're going. And then it kind of opens up and where almost this valley, at least where our destination was, and lots of farmland in the area. I don't know how good lots of cattle, actually. But there was two towns that stuck out for me. There was one really small town we stopped in, more so on the way back. We kind of marked ways to stop, and so then on the way back we did that. And then the main area that we were going to. And I just, I looked at that and go, how do we plant churches here? How do we plant discipleship groups and get people here? Like, it's not far for us north, and what's that look like? And so I really, wrestle with that. But again, that's down the road. And just this reminder, like, I got to get it to work here. And what's that gonna look like? And some days I'm like, yeah, I know exactly. And other days I just feel I don't know. What I do know is I need to pray. If that's something that it's going to happen, I think it's part of the larger vision, but it's just, I've been reminded even in this time off of the need for prayer and my dependence on God in the midst of that. I listened to a talk on Regent College. I'll try to post it maybe down in the comments of the talk, but Regent College, which is out in BC, they do these talks that they stream. I don't know how often they are. I actually kind of forgot they did it and then came across it. They had the gentleman on there. Sorry, I didn't write his name down, but he was just wrestling with this day was part of his book launch, but he was wrestling with how do we deal with some of the Old Testament violence and walking through that. Of course, it got me thinking, and probably got attracted to it because of a conversation I was having with somebody and interested, and just doing a little bit of research, and watched that and got me thinking and wrestling through. I think those talks are really good. I'll throw the talks, the resource down in the comments or the description for us. But it's if you're looking for it, check it out. Let me know what you think. Maybe you know some other good resources. I want to be able to share resources with each other. The other thing that kind of stuck out, I guess, over this time off was, and I think he raised it in that video, which then it just kind of stuck with me, was in Deuteronomy chapter 17. And God is laying out the law and saying, here's all the things you need to do. And then he talks about, they don't have a king yet, but he talks about when they do have a king, because they're going to want a king, even though that was not what God really wanted for them. He let them have the king. And he said, here's kind of what a king needs to do. And he talked about, like, don't build a big army. Don't, and part of the issue there is the king would put their trust, even the people would put their trust in the army. And it's this idea, no, our trust is to be in God. He said, the king's not to be collecting lots of gold. He's not to have lots of wives. Of course, we know all the kings like totally did not even do any of that. And the big thing too that also stuck out was they were supposed to write out the law, and then a priest would check it and make sure it was right. And then they kind of carry that with them. And I was just challenged by that. Like, do we know our scriptures? In the midst of that reflection, I came across an interview with a pastor who was a lot older, at the end of life, and clearly had some influence. I don't know him. It doesn't matter who he is right now. But he was being interviewed, and he was asked the question, if you could go back and tell your younger self, encourage them and speak to your younger self, what would you say? And one of the things he talked to me about, and please hear me, I believe in education, and I think he does too. But he said, I would encourage my young self or young pastors to not worry as much about getting some seminary degree. It's not about getting those degrees. He said, what I would encourage you is to grow in your prayer life and to know your Bible. And it reminded me of this Deuteronomy chapter 17, right? For us as leaders, and I'll let you define what a leader is, because I think there are different types. Some of you, maybe you're a pastor, maybe you'll be like, I'm just, working and trying to make disciples. That's great, because I want to connect with you and learn what you're learning in the midst of this. Whatever circle of influence you have is this call is to know the scriptures. And the connection between the value of knowing the Bible and obeying it. It's not just about a knowledge. You got to obey it. You got to do something with it. Timothy talks about it. That 2 Timothy, I think chapter 3 says, this is like it's to train. It's so that you will live in righteousness, to correct, to teach. Right? It's not just, okay, I read it. You got to do something with it. And I think that's also wrapped up in that piece in Deuteronomy, and to know it. And so those have been some of my reflections over the last couple of days, of just this connection between prayer and knowing the scriptures and being in the scriptures myself, and walking with that. A couple of things I'm excited is, discipling one-on-one with two guys. We've got the men's group coming up. Then we got this week we're doing a winter clothing drive where we've been collecting winter clothing. Friday and Saturday we'll be handing those out. Maybe we'll show some pictures in the next next video. But those are things I'm excited about. 15 guys going to a conference down the road. That's going to stir into some conversation, as well as for men, and how do we make disciples amongst men. So I really see there's a healthy stirring that's happening. We got a newcomers lunch, which I'm also excited about coming up. And the other lesson I learned this morning was I got up early and worked a little bit, and then got my son ready for school and sent off, and I'm just in the office now. Coming in halfway in the middle of the week, or starting my week kind of the middle of the week. I technically started yesterday. It was a bit of a half a day, and I connected with some business leaders in town to help them in that with some bylaws they're working on. And so for the committee, what's the committee called? Affairs Business Group Network. And so they're kind of getting more official, and we need some rules to guide that. So I'm helping speak into that a little bit and just build relationships for the kingdom in there, support my community, right? And there's something else I worked on yesterday. But this morning I sat down and open my sermon, because I need to get my sermon for Sunday, because Sundays are coming. And I have an idea of what I want to preach for this next series we're starting on the priesthood believers, but I couldn't remember what prep work I did, if any, and I kind of just forgot. And so I started going through my notes, and man, I just got reminded of this lesson for prep work. And I know it doesn't always work for everyone, but this week I really needed the help. And I had a good start to the sermon already. And so spent an hour and just over an hour this morning kind of working through that. It's not completed, but that prep work is going to help me this week. And I just reminded of the need to to prep. I think I don't know if it was Karl Varts or someone else who talks about, like, kind of planning out your week, where you're working on this week's, and then you're spending an hour on next week's, and then an hour on something that's a little further out, and throughout your week kind of making sure you have that. And it's not, and what happens is it's those small chunks add up over time. And I think I'm learning that. So that's another lesson that I'm learning. Hey, how do you do in the midst of making disciples, for those that are speaking and preaching or doing larger teaching in classroom settings or other, what's your prep look like? Share that down below. I'd love to hear that. Let's share some of that. And this year I've actually started to use Logos, Bible software. Maybe another time I could talk to that. But that's my week. Hey, this is about making disciples who make disciples. And I am dreaming and praying for the opportunity to see 5, 6, and 7 generations of disciples in my church and around this northern part where we are living. And I'm recording the journey in the midst of that, just sharing my reflections on that. So that's all I got for today. Go and make disciples.